The College Basketball Experience Summit League Edition 2024-25 season preview edition of the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up with that promo code TCESGPN to score up to $1,000 bonus in cash. Underdog Fantasy promo code TCESGPN. And we're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get your 7-day free trial today by going over to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That is the sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM today. Welcome, everybody, into the College Basketball Experience Summit League. We head to the great Midwest. I love this league, the good old Summit League. And it's you know what's unique about the Summit is it's not a huge league. It's regional. You got the Dakotas, obviously North Dakota State, South Dakota State. But you also got Oral Roberts. You also got UMKC, the Tommies. It's a regional league. And you know us over at the College Experience, we love regional leagues. Also had a couple coaches on from this league and can't wait to talk about it. But first off, I am Moneyline Mac, aka the former video coordinator for Bob Huggins and Frank Barton. Also known as Mac Tonight over here at the College Experience, and it wouldn't be a Summit preview without this guy because he loves him some Summit hoops because he is the window banging, drywall hanging, LeBaron driving, Noah Bieniek, a.k.a. Go Tigers Go, Noah B77. What's up, man?
What's going on, Mac? Yeah, it was an outstanding sports weekend. And for some reason, my Wi-Fi wants to struggle as soon as we hit live on this. It was fine the entire time we were prepping for the show, but Tigers clinched for the first time in a decade. We're going to be postseason bound, baby. You also had the NFL, crazy college football day, and President's Cup for golf. So it was a very fun sports weekend. But let's preview some Summit League basketball. And last year, this league was really strong to home court advantages. 62.5% of the home teams won straight up a season ago in the Summit League, and none better than South Dakota State. And Mac, they are getting a new arena this year. Now featured in the thumbnail for today's episode, it was First Bank and Trust Arena is the new arena name. So very cool. It actually just came out like 2 days ago in an article, and I found like 15 pictures of locker rooms and courts and everything that they would be using because it's a multi-purpose arena for volleyball as well, I believe. So really cool. South Dakota State swept the league last year. They won the regular season by 2 games over UMKC, and then they beat Denver in the conference tournament finals. Last year on our preview, Mac and Nick Famelant, who joined us for a couple of conference previews and also various times throughout the year. He writes for us over at Sports Gambling Podcast Network. Both of you guys picked South Dakota State correctly for the regular season. They were a pretty big regular season favorite, so congrats. Yep. I believe you guys parlayed that with Vermont of the America East and somebody else from Colgate from Patriot League. Colgate, yeah. So you guys did all 3 of those shows on one night and you parlayed them all. So that was pretty funny. And then for the conference tournament championship pick, you took North Dakota State. Nick took South Dakota State. Anything overarching from last season that you want to talk about here today, prior to us previewing all 9 teams in the Summit League for the upcoming year?
South Dakota State clearly loses a lot, but it'll be culture and business as usual with this program. We had Eric Henderson on a couple weeks ago on the coaches tour and just talked about the new group that he's got, talked about the new arena, and how fired up they are to play McNeese State in the opener at the Pentagon here in about 5 or 4 weeks from tomorrow night, or 5 weeks from tomorrow night. But it's going to be a hell of a league once again. The Dakotas, like I said, are always really good, headlined by the Jackrabbits and Bison. And I still probably, before we dive into it, will lean to the Jackrabbits. But yeah, it's maybe they're a little bit more vulnerable than previous years.
Yeah, you mentioned it. They do not return a lot. They actually return the least amount of minutes from last season, 27.5% of their minutes, and they're the youngest, least experienced team entering the year in the Summit League. Should be interesting. I did one quick sweep through before we did today's show. Sneak peek. I was actually prepping for another big conference preview that we're doing here in the middle of the week. So the Summit League, unfortunately, didn't get my undivided attention, but I'm ready to do that for the next hour for them. But yeah, when I was doing my quick sweep before the show, I was like, you know what? I don't think South Dakota State's as good as they usually are, but I don't know if anybody like sticks out to me on paper that like they're going to definitely challenge for the conference title here. So I don't know if the Summit League.
There could be one team that we'll talk about.
Yeah, so I don't know how great the Summit League is going to be this year, but that just means that South Dakota State might be right there again, running away with this thing. We'll see. Before we get to each team preview, we're going to pause for 15 seconds for station identification, because over on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, there is a new show called Get to the Points, featuring professional comedians Doug Stanhope, Brendan Walsh, and Sean Green. And basically every Thursday night, they're talking shit. They're going out their favorite NFL picks. And these guys have been featured on the Joe Rogan podcast, the Howard Stern Show, Comedy Central. So you may have heard of one, two, or maybe even all three of them. So we highly encourage you to check this thing out. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or on your YouTube here, or follow, like, review, rate wherever you're listening to these shows. Alrighty, Mac, let's jump in alphabetical order in the Summit League, and let's preview each team here. We're going to start with the Denver Pioneers. My Pios, the flag right there. There's only 3 D1 schools, with the school that I went to's nickname, the Pioneers. And I believe it was 2, maybe 3 years ago now, there was a Pioneers team, a Denver Pioneers team that I was kind of high on, and Colby shit on me for betting on them day one of the college basketball season, and it became a running joke. So that's the backstory on that, and why Colby always picks on me for loving, air quotes there, loving the Denver Pioneers. But you know what? I do favor them a little bit with the Pios. So that's the backstory there. Backstory on this roster is it kind of fell apart. They lose their best 3 players from last season, which featured none other than the nation's leading scorer, Tommy Bruner, who averaged 24 points per game, 4 assists, shot at 43.5% from the field, 35% from 3, a volume shooter, nonetheless. And they also lost Tuco Dynamo into the Mountain West, which we previewed last week. Go check that out. He was a 15-point per game scorer, 7.5 boards per game. And then Jackson Brenchley averaged 11 points per game. He is also moved on from this program, along with Drake Muller, Tyson Graff, and Dan Mukuna, who all transferred out. Transferring in was Nicholas Shagbonyo from McLennan Junior College, 21.3 points per game, 5.5 boards, almost 3 assists per game. Other than that, they're backfilling a lot of this with, good continuancy. I'm looking for a better word, but I can't find it. Continuity. There we go. Thank you for helping, Mac. And
that's why I'm here.
Yeah, quite a few freshmen as well, I will say that. So, look, I'm not too high on the Pios this year. Mac, how do you feel about this Denver squad?
Yeah, so what? This is year 4 of Jeff Woolburn. They go on that Cinderella run last year that you talked about. They get all the way to the Summit Championship game. They upset Nebraska, Omaha. They upset UMKC. And then they honestly gave the Jackrabbits a hell of a game in the final. They felt like they hit their stride, but they lost basically everything. So it's kind of a rebuild here. Every year under Wilburn, they've won 6-7 games in league play. I think it's a bottom half of the league team just because of all the question marks, the unknown of losing the amount that they lost. But with that said, I could maybe also see them working their way into the middle tier. Just if all these guys mesh together, next man up steps up. But in a preview setting right now, I got to put them in the bottom half.
Yeah, in his previous 3 seasons at the helm, Wilburn's defenses have not been great. 7th in the Summit League, 8th in the Summit League, 9th in the Summit League. The only thing, I mean, they were 9th last year defensively. The only thing that kept them upright was Bruner and a good offense that was 4th in the league. But the league was kind of performing really well offensively last year. This year, I think their offense takes a step back. The defense already has a really, really low floor. Returning for them, they have DeAndre Craig at the point, averaging 2.5 assists. Not a great shooter, though. He played 23 minutes a game last season. Also, Isaiah Ado Ankra, who played 23.5 minutes a game last year. 6 points per game, 2.5 boards per game. He was a 36% three-point shooter a season ago. And then in the front court, Pedro Lopez San Vicente, who played 21 minutes, averaged 6.5, 3.5, and was 34% from 3 as a forward. He also returns for this team. But other than that, they're going to have to look for a couple of freshmen to churn out some roles here and hope that DeAndre Craig steps up as a scorer. So I don't see it. I have them and maybe in the cellar, and that's harsh for my Pioneers, but we're going to have to, move on. Yeah, we're gonna have to move on to the UMKC Roos, who last season they finished 11-21 overall, 7-11 in conference, which was good for. Actually, no, that was 2023. Sorry,
yeah,
UMKC
I was going to say they finished second.
16-16 overall, 10-6 in conference, tied for second last season. My apologies. I was reading the 2023 season. So they took a step up last year, and then they lose from last year's team. Honestly, quite a bit of bodies, but production-wise, Christian Corso is the only one that I think was like a huge contributor here. Played 25.8 minutes per game, 10.3 points per game, 4 assists last season. He transfers out alongside quite a few transfers. Julian Ramirez Montero, Abdullah Elijahwan, Jeff Gandu, Precious Idiaru, Malik Olafioy, Jevon Sullivan, Cole Glasgow, Tyler Andrews, Alan David Mukiba, Promise Idiaru, and Artis Stapleton. All of these guys played 15 minutes or less last season. They return 3 guys that played almost 30 minutes a game last year, and then 3 more that were over 15 minutes a game a season ago. The big duo in, I would say, the big duo on the wings, Anderson Kopp, who averaged 13 points per game last season, 5 boards, 3 assists, and played 31 minutes. He's back. He's a graduate senior. And then Jamar Brown, also a 6'5" wing senior, 35 minutes a game, 15 points per game, 6.1 rebounds, 1.5 assists. They are going to rely on incoming transfer point guard from Indian Hills Junior College, 91st in JUCO recruiting, top 100, Devontae Hall, who averaged 11.7 points per game, 2.9 rebounds, 2.9 assists. They also get Kasheem Grady from Howard, Texas Junior College, 14.5 points per game, 5 boards. Gob from Hill Junior College, 12.5 points per game, 2.5 rebounds, almost 4 assists. That's a hell of a name, Gob. And then Josh Ajay, who comes in from Casper Junior College, 8.7 points per game, 8.7 rebounds per game, 3.5 blocks per game as a 6'9" forward. Mac, this is a team that I think could push South Dakota State this year. This is one of the 2 that I circled that I said, hey, if South Dakota State doesn't actually win this conference, it's going to be the Roos, and then there's another team that we'll talk about in a little bit. But Mac, what are your feelings on UMKC this upcoming year?
Yeah, so they finished 2 games out last year, year 2 of Marvin Menzies' era there, and I think people don't realize how good a coach Menzies is. I mean, what he was able to do, his sustained success at New Mexico State, he kind of got that thing going, and then it got over to Hooten, who's now at Sam Houston, Jans was there, and then Paul Weir took over. So they've had a bunch of guys, but Menzies was the guy that kind of got it started at New Mexico State. And I just think that they made that jump for a reason. He knows what kind of player, what kind of program he wants to run. They're going to be a defensive-oriented program. They were, I think, at the top of the league last year on the defensive side of the basketball, and I think that's why they were able to make that jump from 7 to 2nd. I think they're going to be right there to win the league. I'm seeing eye to eye with you on this Roos team, and you got to like the production that's coming back. According to Bartorvik, 70+% of returning minutes, 60% of returning production. What was the last time UMKC won the Summit? They're going to be right there to win it this year.
100%. And you're putting me on the spot because I do not know. Because like you said at the top, the Dakotas and Oral Roberts has kind of run this conference for quite a few years in a row here. But I do like the shout because UMKC's defense has been really, really good, especially last year when they finished first in KenPom defensive efficiency. Before we continue on and preview the rest of the 7 teams in the Summit League, we're going to pause and talk to you about Underdog Fantasy because they are always adding new things to their awesome menu. They now have first touchdown projections. There are a ton of ways to win with NFL, college football, MLB, MMA, NHL, college basketball coming soon, and more. Their lobby is jam-packed with profit boosts and no-sweat entries, and now you can use these specials and boosts on all flexed entries. So sign up today with the promo code TCESGPN to claim your special pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code SGPN. And we are back here on the college basketball experience. Mac, we are previewing the Summit League for college basketball's upcoming season in 2024-25. We're going to move on to the North Dakota Fighting Hawks. Last season, North Dakota was kind of all over the place, in my opinion, but they finished tied for second. Finished 18-14 overall, 10-6 in conference, tied for second with UMKC. And this season, they returning everybody, like not everybody, sorry. Let's start with what they lose. I don't know why I tried switching that up. They lose BJ Ahmet, who averaged 16.5 points per game, 4 boards in 35 minutes. They lose Elijah Brooks, who played 13 minutes a season ago. They lose Tyree Ehanacho, who averaged 14.5 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. And then Sante Zarde. I definitely butchered that last name. 28.5 minutes, 9.5 points, 5 boards, 1 assist. They all transfer out alongside Daniel Hong, and then Brady Danielson is out of eligibility for the upcoming year. Through the transfer portal, they're getting a guard from Tulane, Mir Ponam, who's 6'2" sophomore, and then from Hastings in an NAI school, Reggie Thomas. Also, Darius Woodson from Tyler, junior college, 14.5 points, 4.8 boards, 1.5 assists. Reggie Thomas, by the way, 24 points per game, 7.5 boards, 4.5 assists at Hastings, which is an NAIA school last season. And they do return Trayson Eaglestaff, a 14.5 point scorer from last season, shot at 38% from deep. Mac, the North Dakota Fighting Hawks under 2024-25, your thoughts?
Yeah, Paul Sather headed into his 6th season now. Last year was a big jump for them, and you mentioned it. They kind of were up and down. They won 6-7 in a row in January, then kind of hit a little bit of a wall. down the stretch, losing back-to-back games before the conference tournament, then getting bounced early. I'm torn on this team. I could see them. They're honestly, I kind of view them similar to Denver in a way where I like them a little more than Denver. Don't get me wrong, but I could see them. I like them more in that middle part of the league. I think they take a little bit of a step back from that 2 seed that they were at last year. They do bring back a little bit, but I also think that there's some question marks. I think consistency, especially on the defensive side of the basketball, is my biggest concern with Sather's bunch out there with Fighting Hawks.
Yeah, I think you put that nail right on the head. Consistency is a big question mark. Like I mentioned, they started out 0-3 in conference play. Then they won 7 in a row, and they lost a couple of rivalry games down the stretch, including the game in the conference tournament. Just got beat up by the Dakotas late in the year. But yeah, the pop-up season, I would call it, I guess, from North Dakota last year caught me off guard a little bit. I want to see them kind of do it again before I buy in here. So yeah, I think this is a prove it team. I'll wait November, December, see how they play in their non-conference before I kind of put any firm predictions on them in conference. The next team we're talking about is North Dakota State, the Bison, their in-state rival. Last year, 15-7 in conference, 8-8 in conference, 15-17 overall. For North Dakota, they are losing this season Bowden Skernberg, who played 34 minutes, 14 points per game, 5.5 boards, 2 assists, and Andrew Morgan, 23 minutes per game, 13 points per game, 5 boards. Those two transfer out alongside Lance Waddles, Sam Hastreiter, and Joshua Street. Returning 2 double-digit point scorers and Damari Wheeler-Thomas and Jakari White in the backcourt. Wheeler-Thomas is a junior, 6 foot, played 34 minutes a game last season, 10.7 points per game, 2.5 assists, 37% from deep, 45% from the field. And Jakari White, 6'3" senior, 29 minutes per game, 10.5 points, 4 rebounds, 1.7 assists per game, 45.5% from 3, 48% from the field. Those two are going to really lead this team. Tajavis Miller rounds out that backcourt, a 6'4" junior guard who shot 40% from 3, averaged 8.5 points per game. And then we have Jeremiah Burke in the front court, who's a senior, played only 10.5 minutes per game last season. But the bench is full of seniors too. This is a really experienced squad. Mac, what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, so Dave Richmond's been there a decade now. It's kind of hard to believe. 60% of his games. Last year was a disappointing year, in my opinion. I thought that they were going to be back in the top 3. It was the first time since 2018 that they finished outside of the top 3. They haven't won the regular season title since 2020. I think that they'll be back in the top 3. I don't think that they're going to win the league this year. But I like to talk about culture. This is one of the better cultures in the league. You mentioned it last year. They do bring back, they're kind of in the middle of the pack in terms of returning production with 65% of returning minutes. So I like them to bounce back a little bit this year after a little bit of a disappointing 23-24 season.
Yeah, I have them finishing in the top half too on my preseason rankings that I have in front of me here. And again, I apologize for my Wi-Fi. It says I only have 1 bar, so I'm sure I'm all blotchy and whatever on YouTube. So that sucks. But yeah, and Afghanistan, right? Okay. Perfect. I love it. We're gonna move to the Omaha Mavericks next up here. Last season, Omaha, they had Frankie Fiddler. For the upcoming season, they do not have Frankie Fiddler. They finished 15-18 overall, 7-9 in conference. And like I said, Fiddler is quite a big hit. 20 point per game scorer, 6.5 boards, 2.5 assists. He's playing for Michigan State. Thanks, Omaha, for sending him to my in-state rival in Michigan State. That should be fun. But outside of Frankie, Nick Davis played 26 minutes per game, averaged 9 and 5.5. He is out of eligibility, but everybody else played less than 12 minutes a game last season. You look at Luke Youngers, Jaden Marshall, Baiko Johnson, Jamal Ambrose, Marcel Bryant, London Brown. They're all transferring out, and they really didn't make too much of an impact on last year's squad. Returning is the second leading scorer in Markel Sutton, who averaged 12.5 points per game in 32 minutes with 6.3 rebounds per game. And then two guys in the backcourt that played over 25 minutes last season in JJ White and Tony Osborne. Mac, this is a team that I would say returns some of the core. Are going to have to replace their star player, but the identity from last year's team that finished in the middle of the pack is there. They won't have like that. I don't know if you want to say ball dominant, but he's out of the picture. Are they going to be better or worse than they were last season?
Yeah, that's the question. I mean, Fiddler, sometimes you lose that guy that's so high, such a high usage rate that sometimes can be addition by subtraction. Crutchfield's headed into year number 3. He is a Lon Kruger former assistant. He's been with he's also been at Oregon with Altman. So I like his track record. I like the jump that they made from year 2 to year 3. I think this could be a sleeper team, maybe to sneak into the top half. I kind of like this team with their core being intact. I know they lost Fiddler, but I think maybe they buy in a little bit and they find a way to sum up his or fill in his production by committee.
Yeah, this is another team that has had the poor defense, like I was talking about with Denver, where that's going to provide them a really low floor. In Crutchfield's first season, this was also with Western Illinois in the Summit League. They finished 10th out of 10 teams. Defensive efficiency, last year they took a minor step up and finished 7th. If they continue to take those kind of steps up defensively, I think this could be turning into a middle of the pack team, but I think this is another team that I'm going to have to see it before I predict that. There's just some other programs that I think I feel like are in a little of a better spot right now than Omaha. So I'm going to have this one middle of the pack, probably back of the middle of the pack. They're not quite in the bottom of my standings, but that's where I'm going to land here with the Mavs. Before we finish out this preview, we'll talk about the other 4 teams in the Summit League. The college basketball experience is brought to you by BetUS, who they're the best in the business, and they've been around for more than 30 years. BetUS, you can easily deposit using cryptocurrency and get lightning fast payouts when you look to cash out. We highly encourage you to support SGPN and get yourself access to another great book by signing up at BetUS. Use our link to sign up and get a 125% deposit bonus on your first 3 deposits. Go to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/BetUS. Promo code SGPN so they know we sent you. BetUS, America's favorite sportsbook. And SGPN's partner, Rhythm, is the #1 AI-powered sports betting platform that helps provide bettors of all levels the ability to build custom predictive betting models in seconds and get predictions for betting on money lines, spreads, totals, and props. Build your own model, copy one of the top performing ones from the leaderboard, or press build a model for me. And Rhythm gives you predictions for every game and player prop, and also has a myriad of stats, research, and trend analysis to give you even more betting insights. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And we're home free here today on the college basketball experience, talking Summit League, previewing the upcoming season in all 9 of its teams here. The next one up is the Oral Roberts Golden Eagles, the COVID year Cinderella, taking down 2-seed Ohio State. So now they're 2 years removed. This is the second year removed of the Max Asmus era. Last season, the first year without Asmus, 12-19 overall, 5-11 in conference, tied for last. This year they do bring in a new coach, and it is Russell Springman. Mac, do you have any background knowledge on Springman for us?
Yeah, he's headed into his second year, 12-19 last year because Mills went over to Wichita last year. So this is year 2. They took a little bit on
My
the chin. But I mean, Springman was with Paul Mills every step of the way at Bob Roberts. So, man, I don't know, man. I was kind of I know they lost a lot. They went 30-5, ran the table, but I was a little bit disappointed that they kind of fell as far as they did last year.
Yeah.
I would imagine that they're going to a little bit of a bounce back here, just with their culture of winning over the years. So, but yeah, I'll let you talk about just the additions and subtractions of the roster in the offseason.
Yeah, they lose 2 of their top 3 scorers from last season. Jalen Bedford transferred into the Mountain West, 14.5 points, 6.5 boards last season. And Kareem Thompson's eligibility, he played 38 minutes a game last season, 12.5 minutes, 12.5 points, and 7 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals per game. He's out. He was a stat sheet stuffer. Wow, tongue twister. Deshaun Weaver played 27.5 minutes. He's also out of eligibility. And the rest of the transfer portal subtractions were Jake Shannon, Trey Phipps, Elijah Lawrence, Cam Ambery, Damari Thomas, and Ashton Smith. They did pretty well in the transfer portal, in my opinion. Darius Robinson Jr. comes in from Casper Junior College, 51st ranked junior JUCO recruit by JUCOrecruiting.com. 18.5 points per game, 3 boards, 2.3 assists. Also coming in from Rice, Sam Alajiki, who is a senior 6'7" forward, played 18 minutes a game for the Owls last season. Carlos Rosario transfers in from Drake, 44% 3-point shooter, 6'7" forward. He averaged 2.5 points in 8.8 minutes per game. Chase Martin transfers in from Wofford, who played 18.5 minutes per game for the Terriers last season. Mathak Majok comes in from UMass, played 3.5 minutes. He's 7'3". He's a sophomore. And then Jackson Skipper, a 6'7" forward, comes in for Vermont, was a 56% shooter from the field, played 7 minutes for the Catamounts last season. And Isaac McBride returns for Oral Roberts. He led the team in scoring. He was the biggest returnee, I would say, because I believe this guy hit the portal, came back. Isaac McBride played 38.5 minutes, almost 20 points per game, 3.5 boards, 3 assists, shot at 39.5% from 3, 45% from the field. McBride's a big-time player, one of the best returning players in this conference, if not the best. He's going to probably have them finishing in the middle of the pack, in my opinion, but I don't think that this team is to the caliber as it once was around the COVID era.
No, definitely not. And you mentioned it. McBride, probably preseason player of the year, just with the level of play in this league. So I think that they're going to bounce back into this top 4 area, like they've been, but I don't think they're on that elite level that they've been in the past.
The South Dakota Coyotes are next for us here. They finished last season. They were 12-20 overall, 5-11 in conference, also tied for last with Oral Roberts. And coming into this season, they lose Lahut Tayun, who played 27 minutes per game, 14.5 points, almost a double-double guy, actually, 9.5 boards. I underestimated the impact that he made for this team. Wow. And then also Boyston Holt, who scored 12.5 points, 4.5 boards, and 31.5 minutes last season. He transfers. Steven Kramer transfers after playing 17 minutes per game. Also, Felix Brostrom, Jamil Safidilian transfers out after playing over 10 minutes per game last season. Miles Branch, Jeremiah Coleman, they also transfer out of South Dakota. Coming in from Northwestern State, Chase Forte, who played 31 minutes per game for the Demons, 9.8 point per game score, 4.3 boards, 3.8 assists. Niagara transfer and Dre Bullock, who is a 6'6" senior, played just over 20 minutes per game, 8.5 points per game, 3 boards. He shot at 53.8% from the field. And then Cameron Fens comes in from UIC after playing 5 minutes per game last season. He's a 7-footer. He's a junior. And then Ashton Smith comes in from Oral Roberts after playing 6 minutes in the Summit League for the Golden Eagles last season. They do return Caleb Stewart, who's the other guy that I think, based on production, is the other best returning player in this conference. Played 29.5 minutes last season, 15.5 points, shot at 42.5% from 3, 45% from the field. And then Paul Bruns, 27.8 minutes per game last season, 10 point per game score, 4.5 boards, 34.5% from 3. South Dakota is an interesting team for me. I don't think they're finishing in the basement like they were last season. I don't know how high their ceiling is going to be, but I think there's a nice core returning for this Coyotes team this year, Mac.
I kind of view them in that Denver, North Dakota tier where I could see them working themselves into the middle of the pack, get on the right side of a bunch of one possession games. I'm going to have them in the bottom half of the league. I'm with you. I don't think they're in the floor. This is a big year for Eric Peterson, year number 3 there. They've won 12 games back-to-back years. Can they make a little step here in year number 3?
We move on to their in-state rival, the South Dakota State Jackrabbits. Honestly, the team that's ran this league the last 2 seasons now, along with the existence of Oral Roberts' powerhouse. South Dakota State's been, honestly, the best program in the Summit League for the last decade, easy. 22-13 overall last season, 12-4 in conference. They won this thing by 2 games last year. But like we said at the top of the show, they lose everybody, including Zeke Mayo, who was an amazing player for them. He transferred, just an hour or 2 south, a couple hours south to Lawrence, Kansas, and so that's a big blow. He put up almost 19 points per game, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists in 36 minutes. They also lose 4 other starters in William Kyle III, Matthew Mims, Charlie Easley, Luke Appel. All of those guys, besides Mims, were double-digit point per game scorers. Mims was, played almost 30 minutes per game. Just scoring may not have been his forte, for lack of a better term. And honestly, like, Eric Henderson's relying on his recruiting to backfill this roster and what they lost, because through the transfer portal, they only added Oscar Clough, who comes in from Washington State, played 20 minutes per game for the Cougars last year, 7 points, 4.5 boards, shot at 53.8% from the field. And then Isaac Lindsey comes in from Wisconsin, only played 3.5 minutes for the Badgers last season. So he gets 2 high major recruits that are looking for an expanded role. Those guys easily could contribute, at a much higher rate this season. And then Kalen Gary, talk about contributing at a higher rate. He's going to have a much expanded role. He is the one returner from last season, played 26 minutes per game, 7.5 points per game, 3.5 boards, just over 1 assist, 34.3% 3-point shooter. Mac, you, I think, have a better feeling on this team than I do, in confidence, I guess, that they'll maintain the top spot in the Summit League. Walk us through that.
Yeah, I think it's when you run a program or you have a program like South Dakota State, it's the faces change, but the expectations remain the same. And they're going to play their brand of basketball. They're going to spread you out, have really good spacing on the offensive end, make a bunch of shots. And I just think that the culture in place will still put them right at the top. I think Gary steps up big. I think Clough steps up big. But the main thing, man, is Eric Henderson. I mean, every single year outside of 1 year, he's won the regular season. He's 65-15 in Summit League games in his 5 years there. And one other note, Noah, I meant to say this at the beginning. There's 9 teams in this league, so you're going to play everybody twice. So a 16-game gauntlet for the Summit League fans. I think 11-5 is probably going to be the winner of this league. I don't see anybody running away with this thing. Last year, South Dakota State was 12-4, and I don't think anybody's as good as South Dakota State last year. And I think this thing is going to be 11-5, and you'll have a clunk of 10-6, 9-7 teams. And then I think the basement teams even will be like 6-10 or 7-9. I don't see any high ceiling, low floor teams in this league. But to put a bow on it, I'm banking on Henderson. I think they'll take it on the chin a little bit for their standards early in the non-con, but he'll find a way to get his guys playing their best ball come February and get ready to win the Summit League tournament and hopefully a regular season title for Jackrabbit fans.
I agree with you for the most part, but I do think that there's going to be a cellar dweller that's donating a lot of wins to this conference. I think there's one team that finishes with like 2 or 3 wins in the Summit League
you're
this
selling
season.
your tickets. I know where you're going.
Yeah, selling the tickets. That was a great way to put it. Speaking of wanting season tickets, we've talked about wanting shoenecker tickets. The St. Thomas Tommies. Last season, they finished 20-13 in conference, 20-13 in overall, 9-7 in conference. I don't know why I've jacked that up a couple of times in this podcast, but number 1 overall, I'm butchering this. Number 1 KenPom offensive efficiency in conference last season. Number 2 defensive efficiency, but they finished 5th or 4th in conference. I just butchered this entire intro that I had for St. Thomas, but you get the point. They were a team that got really unlucky at some parts of last year's season. They lose 3 starters. Raheem Anthony, who played 29.5 minutes, 12 points per game, 5 boards per game, 3.5 assists, 1.5 steals per game. Parker Bjorklund, who's a big hit as well, 25 minutes, 13 points per game, 4.5 boards, just over 1 assist. And then Brooks Allen, 27.5 minutes per game last season, 7 points per game, 3.5 boards, 1.5 assists. Coming in through the portal, they add a graduate senior 6'8" forward and Rich Beyer from Green Bay. Played 19.5 minutes for the Phoenix last season. Can shoot it from 3 if St. Thomas wants him to, which they do love their 3 ball. He shot at 32.8% from last season from deep. They bring in Jermaine Coleman, a redshirt freshman from Purdue Fort Wayne, and then Miles Barnstable, a D3 transfer from Wisconsin Whitewater. He averaged 16.5 points per game last season, 3.3 boards, 1.5 assists, shot at 35.7% from deep, but volume shooter there at D3 Wisconsin Whitewater, who I know for sure they're a football powerhouse. Mac, you might have a little bit of better background knowledge when they're with their basketball program, but I know that's just a really good athletic department. Good baseball program too. Drake Dobbs comes back, 9.5 points per game and 30 minutes per game. Kendall Blue comes back after playing 28 minutes per game, 10.5 points, 4 boards, 1.5 assists. Dobbs also averaged 2.5 assists there. Bjerke, a 6'9" redshirt sophomore, 45.5% from 3 last season. He's a big piece to this roster, I think, this year. Mac, how do you feel about the Tommies?
Dude, the Tommies are going to be good this year. I mean, they actually scratch that. They've been good pretty much
since they
the
came
last
up.
couple of years. Yeah, since they came up. They took it on the chin a little bit in the 21-22 season, but the last 2 years, 39 combined wins, back-to-back top 4 finishes in the Summit League. John Torres doing a good job over there. They had so much success as well at the D2 level, D3 level, where they were in the Final Four, winning a national championship every other year. So they kind of, like South Dakota State, have a brand, have an identity of how they want to play basketball, and it's worked well there for years and years, and they're not going to change. So the faces may change, but the tradition of Tommy's basketball remains the same, and dude, they're going to be right there to win the league. Stay tuned. I may pick them.
Really? Okay. I like it. What do you mean by stay tuned? We're going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about our preseason predictions, basically our 1 through 9 rankings in this conference. And emphasis on preseason because as the transfer portal gets even more powerful, it honestly didn't hit the Summit League as bad as it hit some other leagues that we've already talked about. But I keep mentioning this, teams are allowed to get better throughout the season. We're looking at these teams a lot on paper here in the preseason, also judging by program pedigree as well. In Mac's case in point, a lot of times we're judging this in September currently, September 29th, but we're also trying to predict where they're going to end up by March 15th per se. So go ahead, Mac, start us off with your prediction for last place in the conference.
Denver. Sorry, Pioneers, you're in the basement.
Yeah, my beloved Pios are going to be catching a lot of points in this conference. I got them 9th as well.
At number 8, I got the Coyotes of South Dakota.
All right. I have Omaha 8th.
Okay. I think 6 or 9 we're going to agree on, by the way. At number 7, I have North Dakota.
I have North Dakota 7th as well.
Okay. And then do you have South Dakota 6 and I have Omaha 6?
South Dakota 6, you have Omaha 6th.
Yep.
Correct.
Okay. So, yep. I figure we would agree on 6 through 9, and then I think we may agree on 5. I got Oral Roberts making a little bit of a step here in year 2 of Springman. So yeah, but I need to. I think I don't think they're as good as these other 4 teams.
You were right. We do agree on Oral Roberts 5th.
Okay. And at number 4. Went back and forth. I took the Bison at 4. I did say top 3, but I like the other teams better.
Yeah, I had the same feeling. I think probably on the same 2 teams as you for 3rd and 4th. It was honestly my toughest decision on this entire list. I'm going to go St. Thomas 4th.
Ooh, all right. At number 3, I went with UMKC.
Okay, no, it wasn't the same teams that we were hemming and hawing about. I have North Dakota 3rd. North Dakota State 3rd.
Dakota State. I was like, how many? Yeah. You can't rank them third.
I got caught with not putting State there.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah. Okay, so you got.
Who do you have winning the league?
Henderson has won the league 4 out of 5 years. They lose a lot. I think he's going to finish 2nd. I got the Tommies winning the Summit League.
We both got cute.
The Tommies, baby, and the Jackrabbits finished 2nd. But that conference tournament's in South Dakota, though.
I know. We both did the same fucking thing. I have the Roos winning this. The Roos. I love what they return. They have 4 seniors or juniors in this backcourt. 3 of them that played over 30 minutes a game last season. Jamar Brown and Anderson Kopp, I think, is a tremendous duo. They also bring in a distributor from the JUCO ranks. Look, I think UMKC is going to be really, really good this year. I think they have that continuity that's going to give them the early start in conference, where I think South Dakota State might still be trying to find it in early January. But I'm right there with you. I think the Jackrabbits get it in their home state. I believe it's the Pentagon that hosts the conference tournament each and every single season for the Summit. I got the Jackrabbits winning the conference tournament.
So I actually was wrong on that last year. It's not at the Pentagon anymore. It's at Denny Sanford Premier Center. So I think it's right down the road from and Summit League fans and South Dakota State fans, help us out. I think it's right down the road, but it is in South Dakota. I do like the Jackrabbits. Jackrabbits over Bison in the final. Bison. Here, I'll call my shot right now. The Bison, the 4 seed, will upset the Tommies in the semis. Tommies over UMKC in the semis. And then Eric Henderson and the Jackrabbits get it done in the conference tournament. And this may be the last year we're talking about Eric Henderson coaching South Dakota State. I think he might be on. I think he's what he's been able to do there in his 5 years there, just like Otzelberger, just like Nagy over at Southern Illinois now. I think he's bound for a Power 5 job here in the future.
Interesting. I like the take, and you interviewed him on your summer coaches tour. We encourage you to go check those out. We've got them playlisted. But before we get out of here, we got to give sleepers and bust predictions, Mac. Bust, I think we both have the same. So North Dakota tied for second in the league. Currently, we don't have preseason poll or KenPom ratings. We do have Torvik, but we've never used Torvik for this. We've gone off of last season's standings for a lot of these sleepers busts. I have North Dakota finishing 7th. That's got to be my bust after finishing tied for second last season.
Agreed. I'm with you.
And then for sleeper,
Tommy's in UMKC.
For you, UMKC finished tied for second last year. St. Thomas finished 4th. You have Thomas winning it. I would allow that because it's only a 9-team league. 4th to 1st is a good jump, but I'm not going to give myself tied for second, making a small jump to 1st. What I'm going to do is I'm going to give it to Oral Roberts after finishing tied for last. I've got them finishing 5th this season, so I think that's got to be my labeled sleeper team.
I guess they're my sleeper as well because I have the same jump in my ranking. So, yeah, it's a small league, and one thing I do really like about this league is we're gonna have a true champion because everybody plays everybody twice.
Round robin style.
I play you on my home court. I play you on your home court, and whatever our record after 16 games will be a true champion. And then we'll get ready to go to South Dakota here in the first week of March. Can't wait. I know their media days coming up as well in the summit.
Yeah, I think it's the first, or if not the first week in October, it's like the 8th or 9th. I can't remember. They're all blending in. But, it's going to be great stuff. Like I said, playlists here on the YouTube channel. You can find all of Mac's summer tour, coaches tour. He took the summer out of it here recently because it's now the fall, but all of his coaches tour interviews you can find playlisted. He's had around 50 of them now over there on YouTube and on podcast platforms. Speaking of podcast and YouTube, all these conference previews are playlisted on YouTube, and you can find them on podcast platforms, along with the college football experience, college baseball experience, college basketball experience, the FCS college football experience, the Big 12 college experience, along with many other shows from SUPN, because we've got something for everybody. If you're looking for NHL, MLB, NBA, NFL, the Sports Gambling Podcast has you covered there. And they also dip their toes into everything in the sports world that is, big. And each week they're going daily NFL coverage and also covering some of the biggest sports stories and sporting events from a gambling point of view. So we highly encourage you to check that out. That's the flagship show of the network. This has been the College Basketball Experience. You better start thinking about yours, and we out of here.